let's jump into the Frogs itself and talk about the last quarter or so of it, the competition between Aeschylus and Euripides. Not surprisingly, probably to any of you, by far the most famous part of the play, and I think for good reason. I don't know about you guys. I'm just throw this out, and correct me if you disagree and think it's wrong, but I'm way more into tragedy than comedy for the most part, and it has something to do with I'm kind of a, for want of a better word, depth addict. I like real shit. I like stuff that has emotions. I like stuff that has, you feel like you're grounded and when it's one joke after another, even if it has social import, such as, of course, Xanthias complaining about his load, etc., within the context of a society where slavery is not only taken for granted, but the majority of people living in Athens and Sparta, among other places, were slaves. It's not a laughing matter. No, I'm not saying Aristophanes shouldn't have included a slave in the play. What I'm saying is it's not an unimportant thing. It's not an important topic, etc. But how long can you go on with the same joke over and over and over and over and over and over? And that's why it was pissing me off. And this is probably when I was close to your age when I first read it, and I was like, bullshit. But I don't know. Now, tell me I'm wrong. Go ahead. Like I gave you those pages. I didn't see things developing. I saw like, it almost felt like, like special effects movies, heavy movies, where it's like, I don't care how much love's going on, how much happiness, play with the kids out in the backyard, it's beautiful. You're just warming up for some giant collision or some, you know what I mean? That's why you're there. That's why you're paying your $15 for the giant, IMAX screen. And that. That's how I felt about Frogs to some extent, that you're leading up to that Aeschylus Euripides thing. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I didn't feel it was as unbalanced in that respect in terms of priorities. It felt way more unbalanced along those lines than, in my eyes, the Lysistrata come in next and the Clouds. But I don't know. Maybe you agree. But maybe that's its purpose. I don't. It won first place, you guys. Yeah. All right. Now, a lot of classicists conjecture that that one of the big reasons it won first place is because all of that frivolous is a good word for it. Frivolous material. My gosh, if you're going through the kinds of things they were going through, so close to the very, very end of a war that was the worst war just like our Civil War, as far as casualties goes, in the entire history of Greece. Depending on how you look at it, you can argue that the Persian War as well, depending on how you count things, and it's pretty hard to do. But let's just say way up there in the big leagues. Oh boy, all I want to do is be entertained. I want to be, and it also helps that argument that the fact that middle and late comedy, which I told you we have no exemplars of middle and one exemplar, pretty much a whole play of new. It just goes further and further into that frivolity and into that lack of kind of satirical gravitas, you know what I mean, that you find in Aristophanes' best aspects, which you're going to see more in the Lysistrata and the Clouds. I don't know. So I guess I'm letting that sway me, the fact that it won first place, to like double second guess myself. What Aristophanes is most famous for is he, on the one hand, he's satirizing the politics of his time, which deserved to be in many ways. On the other hand, he's in the middle, now in this case, at the end of a civil war, that is pretty much, obliterating what Athens has been for the last at least 100 years. They were allowed to still stand. They were allowed to still be Athens, and to even philosophy, among other things, flourished there afterwards with Plato and Aristotle, etc. But still, this really was a crucial historical turning point. So yeah, I think that it is definitely a skill to do that, and that has probably a lot to do, as a lot of those scholars say, with why it was first place. It's just it was such a balm, BALM, to the to the consciences of people going through that terrible stuff. Okay, so now as far as the details, let's get a little bit into that. I'm a literary theory freak. I like that stuff. So I won't bore you too much with, I brought up the Russian formalists, and that's the tip of the iceberg with that kind of stuff. I love that stuff. Think of literary theory as a kind of extension of philosophy in a way. It's just rather than looking at the mind or ethics or whatever, you're looking at a bunch of words, and you're trying to find meaning in them. That's pretty much what literary theory is, and criticism. So that's what Aristophanes is at least trying to do near the end of the Frogs. Aristophanes is extremely aware of Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides as what Pericles called the three, as this play makes clear. You're not talking about many other playwrights, except as minor ones. And so let's look at some of the actual substance of the comparison between Aeschylus and Euripides. Because that's what I thought would be the most fun to talk about in here, is after you having read both Aeschylus and Euripides and getting a sense of the difference between them, somebody tell me, if you would, what is one point that is brought up in over the course of the performance that in which there's a difference between Aeschylus and Euripides, and one or the other is considered to be better than the other. So what is the charge by Aristophanes when it comes to the difference between Aeschylus and Euripides? This idea of Euripides repeating, saying something that fits into the line scheme consistently over and over and over and over. One of the criticisms that Aeschylus had, you might remember, in the Frogs, is that you could pretty much say that one line, which is pretty random, and it fits snugly into the same metrical scheme. Homer, pretty much the shizzle of ancient Greece, period. I'm not talking just literature. He's the thing. He is famous for a lot of things. His Iliad and the Odyssey were pretty much the Bible, secular and religious, for the Greeks. And one aspect of the Iliad and the Odyssey that modern interpreters of it have pointed out is that there are many what are called formulae, but are really, pretty much what's going on there. Repeated phrases for practical purpose of being able to fill up slots of the poetry so that you can think ahead to what you're going to say next, given the fact that the Homeric epics supposedly were improvised, as hard as that is to believe. Enough to where a lot of people say bullshit. It's not. Okay, so it's still debatable. Okay, so that was the idea: is that Homer inherited several phrases from the past, traditional phrases from as far back as the Mycenaean period, as far as we know, and he would reuse them in different contexts in order to fill up parts of a line in order to allow him to think ahead. Put that fact together with the fact that Aristotle, the philosopher, and others consider Euripides to be most akin to Homer in his sensibilities when it comes to emotion, when it comes to, he was seen to be a kind of resurrector of the Homeric spirit in a lot of ways, okay? As opposed to Aeschylus, who was more compared to the lyric poets, the more difficult poets, where you don't always, it's less predictable and you don't have nearly as much repetition, etc. And then Sophocles is somewhere in between. With Euripides, it's kind of like bringing Homer back into the picture. And as someone who reads the original Greek as well, I am here to tell you that there is no author, no verse author. Herodotus in prose is definitely the most similar to Homer. But when it comes to having a sense of feeling like what it's like when you read Homer, when you read the choruses and various longer passages of Euripides, the language, the diction, the intonation, the accentuation, the various aspects of it, the meter, in fact, feels very much like Homer. So what I'm getting at here is that the audience would, I believe, may have made a connection with Homer about, and that would have been like, oh, okay, so you're making fun of this notion of Euripides being the new Homer. See what I'm saying? So this is one example of how richly elusive, these plays are from one playwright to the next, especially starting with Euripides and then on to Aristophanes and later on with Menander, the new comedy guy. He makes references to Euripides and Aristophanes, and it's really a kind of intertextual, what we today would call intertextual process, looking back at all these different writers. So yeah, the only way to know that is to steep yourself deeper in the literature, in Homer and Hesiod and the lyric poets and etc. So that's maybe the most important thing to bring up is the difference between this idea of Aeschylus being the more ethereal poet and Euripides the more down-to-earth one. Anybody remember a part of the competition where Aeschylus or Euripides was considered to be superior to the other guy, but you disagree? You're like, I don't know about that. Based on what you've read so far of Aeschylus and Euripides. Anything like that jump out at you? Does anyone think that there's any particular criticism of Aeschylus or Euripides that resonated with you? And it was like, oh yeah, that rings a bell in terms of the difference between these two playwrights. What about this whole weighing the words thing? What's going on there? So is there any irony here to Aristophanes creating a play where for the last several hundred lines you have nothing but frivolity, and now you're getting to the part where they have their contest, and the real crux, at least one of the cruces of their contrast between them is which one is deeper, which one is heavier. It's like because Aristophanes gets deeper. We're using that word over and over, but in some plays more than others. Bacchae, extremely deep. I mean, you're dealing with literally someone getting eaten up by, ripped up by his mother. But here, I don't know. Maybe there is or isn't some kind of irony to the fact that you have such the idea of the weighing of words plays such a large role, part between in the comparison between them. But then, does Aristophanes walk his talk? I guess is what I'm kind of getting at in that respect. And if not, then is it just part and parcel of the genre he's working in, or is there something more at work here in terms of a contrast between what he's doing and what how is portraying Aeschylus and Euripides is doing? Next is Lysistrata. Give it some time. You're going to enjoy it. I guarantee it. If you don't, I don't know. Go ahead and do I give you like $1 or something? I don't know. I'll apologize or something if you don't like it. But I think you really will like it. Okay, see you guys.